Welcome to the Paddle and Portage podcast. News update. We bring you from time to time about news specific to the Boundary Waters, wilderness, and canoe country. Joe Fredericks, always on top of the news for the region. What's the top of the list today?
Well, right now it's that blizzard outside. Look at that.
Well, I did drive over here in it, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Swirling around. I just love these snowfalls.
Well, January, we got in a 10-inch unexpected snow event that occurred on our first winter camping trip, as you'll be hearing in an upcoming episode of the podcast. It's a beautiful start to winter up here in the Boundary Waters. And as you said, a lot of news happening. I mean, Go Live Day, as we've already talked about, it's right around the corner. And some news from the Forest Service more recently, mid-January, was that the food storage order, where you hang your food, this is during the canoe season, basically, canoe hiking, open water season, has been extended to 2031. No other real changes other than, dun-dun-dun-dun,
It applies in the winter.
no longer. It did. Remember the original order when it came out, which had a bit of a bumpy rollout. Even the Forest Service has acknowledged that, just the way that they inform the public and the media about that you are required to hang your food now at a campsite or use one of these bear certified bags that like a Kevlar type bag. And that was back in 2024. That seems mostly now sort of water under the bridge. Compliance is very high with it. It's really not a big deal anymore. The only thing that was somewhat annoying with it was that it went into effect annually from March 1st until November 30th. Well, March, that's when we're still out winter camping, LB, chasing lake trout around the wilderness and on the ice, obviously. And so now with the updated order that came out in mid-January here, just, within the past day or two, is that it starts April 1st, which by and large, the lake trout season ends March 31st. You're starting to get into some deteriorating ice, and there's not a lot of activity, no reason to be out there in April, by and large, as far as winter camping goes, and even overnight camping. I mean, the quota season starts May 1, but April's a quiet time. So it's great news. It's really cool. The Forest Service communicated this very effectively and efficiently, shared information with Paddle and Portage ahead of the release, which I greatly appreciated, just to be on the same page.
That is great news. So we know we don't have to hang our food on the next winter camping trip, because boy, it was hard to get that heavy food pack up on our lake trout opener.
You almost tore your shoulder out of socket.
Well, there's definitely a little tenderness still, but all in the name of compliance, I say.
So we've got an article on paddleandportage.com about it with links, and check it out if you're interested in learning more. But really no changes other than that April 1 versus March 1, and rolls through 2031. That order has been extended for 5 years. So that's some news about the wilderness, some news for Paddle and Portage, the paddling community, and all kinds of people from the upper Midwest and far beyond. Canoecopia 2026 is nearing. That's in March, or right around mid-March, March 13th to the 15th. And we will, of course, be back. In fact, we were invited once again from Darren and the Rutabaga team and Canoecopia to be the official media partner. So if you were there last year, we had that recording studio set up near one of the entrance exits into the main floor of Canoecopia. We're going to be back in there recording interviews again. LB, you had that great setup that you made, and so we'll get that rolling again, and we'll have a booth at the same spot actually where we were last year. And I actually had a chance to speak with Darren because there's been some things happening with Rutabaga. Darren was going to sell it, close it, sell clothes. What's going on? Is Canoecopia happening? A lot of that vibe, like in August, September. So let's just check in with Darren ahead of this year's event. Keeping it real with Darren Bush is what we're doing, because we're already talking about the Boundary Waters. And so here we go. Let's just keep talking about it. We're talking about our shared love of the eastern side of the wilderness.
Yeah. Shh.
Well, I
No,
mean, there's only so many permits, but like, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't have the Ely influence, obviously, and even the Gunflint to an extent, yes, but there's so much sort of up in that northeast corner that a lot of the lakes people don't even know of.
right. Well, you just mentioned one that I didn't know of, and I spent a lot of time over there. But yeah, I was just saying, I hear a lot of people say, well, that's an out and back. It's like, so, I mean,
Uh-huh.
is it ugly coming back? I mean, and so I love Crocodile Lake. You know, it's long and it's skinny, and there's some really cool topography and a little tiny waterfall as you go up that portage, right? And it's paddling all the way to the end and paddling all the way back. It's great for solo because, you know, when I paddle solo trips, I'm never in a hurry. That's why I'm going solo. Paddling down to the end and camping and paddling back, it's only like a mile and a half. And then you pop out and go to a different length that's an out and back. And right, so what?
Crocodile, we did a fishing opener up there one year, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it was great. Didn't
Yeah.
see anybody. The fishing was phenomenal. The campsite was great. It's a beautiful area, and then you go further east from there, and there's some loops. If people are against this idea of an out and back, as you're suggesting, or people get hung up on that, like that area up through Mountain and Moose and down around to the Fowls and out at John, like that's about as good as it gets almost, and that's very underutilized, or it can be at certain times of year.
And that's just fine. I mean, and part of it is, you know, the Canoe Pine Lake portage scares people because it's what 250 rods and it looks like a wiggly worm, right? It's not a straight shot. But again, if you've done the Tuscarora portage or, you know, Arrowhead coming out of Eggman,
Mhm.
it's just like doing two short ones at the same time. So, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you've been spending a lot of time the past few years, at least, up at the end of the Gunflint and Sag and Knife area, right? That seems to be your kind of home waters.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. The first trip I took there in 1980, we went in the Gunflint side, and it just kind of stuck. And there's so much to explore there. I mean, even it's like, well, you know, it's only one direction in. You know, again, so what? You know, my wife did a trip up there with some girlfriends. Really, really cool trip, and they stayed 2 nights in every campsite, and the loop they did was Sag to Red Rock into Ogish, and then around the corner to Seagull and
Mhm.
Pine and Seagull. And you know, it was probably 20 miles of paddling total. I tend to forget that it doesn't have to be a death march, you know. And then I go back and look at my 5 days, and I went 62 miles. What was I thinking? This is dumb.
Right. You saw a lot of stuff, but how much did you really see it type thing, you know?
Well, and that's the point is if you're looking at the bow of your boat, you're not looking around. And there's a great poem by Wendell Berry where he talks about a guy going on vacation and filming it, you know, like, you know, looking through his camera, and then he saw this looking through his camera, and the last line is, but he wasn't there. He was never there. So put your camera away and just look real hard.
I've been trying to do that more and more, Darren. I mean, with the media aspect of stuff, just really being like, you know what? Not this time. This is Joe's outing today and our group's energy, and not to be shared even.
Well, and you have pressure to produce content because of your job. It's like, oh, I need to get a picture of that. I'm like, no, you don't.
Mhm.
Have a picture of Otter Track somewhere in your hard drive, right?
All right.
And so unless the light's different or perfect or something's really amazing, just paddle. And you know, I went the last trip I took was a year and a half ago, I think, with some friends of mine who'd never been there before, and it was on their bucket list. They're from California, by Tahoe, and they're both professional photographers. So I didn't even get my camera out, and they took just stunningly beautiful pictures, and I just got to enjoy that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Well, let's back up a little bit and go to late last summer, fall 25, and one of the first things I thought about when you announced that you were closing the store, selling the store, retiring, going to transition into a new phase of your life
Mm.
was that you'd be coming up here more into the Boundary Waters area and doing more paddling. And that was my first thought. And maybe that remains true, but some of that storyline has changed. Most notably, that Rutabaga will hopefully be continuing forward, and what we know for sure and was always the case is that Canoecopia is happening in 26. So let's just step back there and fill us in on where things are at with Rutabaga, how you're doing, what you're doing, and then we'll get into Canoecopia in a minute.
Well, excuse me, it's really an interesting journey, and I followed it the best I could, and I thought, I think I just need to stop. So I'm just gonna we'll close up. I'll sell the building I'm in. I'll sell our warehouses and just kind of ride off into the sunset. And then within like 2 to 3 weeks, hundreds of emails and texts and postcards and handwritten letters, saying, you definitely need to reconsider this, Darren. You can't just leave us hanging, right? You need to think about it. And I talked to a friend who was a business broker, and he said, you're making a huge mistake. Like, why? He said, you've got a super important brand, and a super important role in the paddle sports community, and you can't just walk away from that. It's not fair to the community. I'm like, well, yeah, but it's fair to me. And I got to take care of myself. And he's like, there's a way to do both. So, been working on finding a buyer since late last fall. Took a break for the holidays just because no one answers their phone anyway.
Yep.
And so, it's for sale, but I'm not going anywhere until it's where I want it to be. And if that takes another year, it takes another year, and I would like it not to. But I've already turned away people that would not carry forward with the vision that I have for this place, which is to maintain the community. I came to the conclusion that I'm going to work less. I've got really good staff, but I'm not going to abandon this place. This is too important. It's not an egotistical sort of way, but the shop is important, and that creates that community. And it's not as much about me as it is about the community that's here because of this, and the letters that I've received. Um, well, I had a story yesterday. I was at yoga, and yoga's over, and I see a friend of mine I hadn't seen in a couple of years, and we worked together when we were in public health 20 something years ago. And she came over, Darren, my love, and gave me a big hug, and how you doing? And she was with her friend and said, this is my friend Mary Elizabeth. I said, oh, nice to meet you. She said, oh, I know who you are. I said, what? She's like, so 3 years ago, my boyfriend came into the shop, and he had lost his wife, and he wanted to trade in his tandem for a solo. Like, that's a good idea. It's been about a year since she passed. I'm like, it's a good time to do that. And we got him into a really nice boat, and he's like, this is great. And I said, don't sell your tandem. Okay, just keep it. If you have storage for it, just keep it. It'll be useful again someday. And then Mary Elizabeth said, and then we started dating, and now we paddle all the time. I'm so glad you told him not to sell it. And I had to go back and think real hard about that time. And yeah, I did do that. And it was just, and she gave me a big hug, and it was like, okay, this isn't going to happen if Rutabaga goes away. It might in some ways, but I don't do this, didn't do this, still don't do this to be rich, because this is a dumb way to work so hard. But it's really important that people's lives are changed, and that happens, one person at a time.
Right. It sounds like the business is still for sale here in now in 2026,
Yeah,
and there was some we maybe heard like there was some in-house interest or people that in Madison, but it's still just for sale. That's the status.
and I'm not going to do it until it's the right setup. And
Mhm.
I've talked to a couple people that had the right attitude that didn't have the funding. I've talked to people with funding who didn't have the right attitude, and I need both to make this work.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, what does that do or mean then for Canoecopia coming up in March?
Canoecopia is going to happen just like it always has. There's no it's running exactly the same way. Um, Canoecopia is an integral part of the business. It helps create the community that Rutabaga fosters, and Rutabaga helps promote Canoecopia to help create the community on that side. So, when I was gonna close, I was gonna break it off because I thought at least we have that community. But I think it's better this way. I think it's better to have that enmeshment, I guess. Sounds like a big word, but it's not. That people know that we're here for them 365, not just 3 days a year.
How about vendors, people that we're used to seeing there, the Canadian side of things? How's that coming together given all the stuff going on?
Yeah, nothing is substantially changed. Couple, a couple of manufacturers said, we don't feel comfortable coming to the U.S. And it wasn't a Canoecopia thing. It was a bigger, obviously a bigger thing than that. And I said, we'd love to have you, but I don't blame you. You have to do what you think is best for you. Kevin Callan sent out an email saying, you know what, I'm not going to do any shows in the States until this thing gets figured out. And again, I said, well, we're going to miss you, but I get it. For the most part, Swift is still coming, and some other recreational barrel works and Badger paddle. So I'd say about 3/4 of our Canadian vendors are still coming, and we'll still have product from them, in April. So it's not like we're not going to have stuff. It's just they're not physically coming to the show again for either tariff reasons or just political reasons or a combination of both.
Right. Right. I mean, last year when you and I spoke at the show and in the lead up to the show, when we had I wouldn't say a testy conversation because that thing had just happened with the tariffs at the border, and there was a lot of moving pieces in the week leading up to Canoecopia. So I mean, we were professionals, Darren. We've known each other for a long time, so we're comfortable speaking to each other
Yeah.
in challenging situations. But like it was a tense time last year at the show, even, and so it's not a surprise this year that some of that's carrying over.
No, I mean the problem with that was the tariffs kicked in at midnight on Wednesday. Bill Swift drove over the border at 11 o'clock on purpose and stayed in a hotel on that side of it just to beat that deadline. And then they hit him with the tariff anyway. And he's like, no. So he's driving and I'm on the phone, and it's all water under the bridge. But we got it figured out. He got the proof that he was over the border. And then 3 hours later, they just said, never mind, we're not doing the tariff. And so the thing that's causing most of the problem is it's not it's the unpredictability of everything. And business owners, the only thing they can't tolerate is unpredictability. We can tolerate sales up, sales down, sales sideways. We can tolerate expenses. We can move things around. We can find a way to work it. But the one thing we can't do is plan on something and then 2 weeks later it's completely different. Remote border crossings has an impact that I mean, most people don't know. I mean, you do intimately because you talk to these people all the time, and it's like, oh well, I guess we can't do a remote, border crossing. It's like that has a huge impact on outfitters. It has an impact on, I think you have a friend that has property on the Canadian side you can only get to by paddling. Um, that that lack of foresight is quite annoying, that people just don't think about the ramifications of small actions.
If it's one of those things, Darren, that to the people that it impacts, it's a huge deal. And to most of the population, including when we're talking about RABCs in this specific instance, it's most of the people that come to the BWCA don't even know what an RABC permit is. It's just irrelevant to them. But to these people, like the person that owns a business or a property on the Canadian side of SAG, or the outfitters in Ely on Moose and SAG at the end of the Gunflint, it's a huge deal. And the same with the tariffs when people are coming to the expo, coming to Madison, and like, the average person that attends the weekend at the Alliant Energy Center is just like, all right, we're here, and here's the boats, and here's the paddles, and here's the presenters, not knowing all these little moving pieces and how big of a deal they actually are.
Right. It's like, where's Kevin Callan? Kevin Callan decided not to come here because of the political situation. And some people are like, oh, I get it. And some people are like, well, that's dumb. It's like, yeah, no. And I'll be completely honest, I never thought about remote area border crossings until like a year ago. It's like, that's not really relevant to me, so it didn't matter. But when I realized that there's all these little ramifications, it's like putting a tariff on cherry hardwood, or something like that. Big deal, cherry hardwood. That means a paddle maker can't make anything, right? So that's just an example. But the little things that we don't think about. If there's a tariff on, Kevlar, what does that do to the manufacturers in Canada who now can't get aramid fibers? Yeah, it's like, oh, big deal. It's just Kevlar. Well, outside of the paddling community and the aerospace community, nobody cares.
Yeah, it's these small micro deals within the larger context of what's happening. And I think Canoecopia really is a place. I mean, that was felt last year. There was a vibe at the show last year that was unlike anything, even more so than the first year after COVID, when everybody came back, or it at least matched that sort of energy and coming together. And that paddling community was vibrant, I would say, last year.
Yeah, and I came out of a trip in Baja, and my phone lit up, and it was, here's all the tariffs that are going to happen. And this is 3 weeks before Canoecopia, so I'm on the phone going, okay, how are we going to work this? Nothing's predictable. So, and you're right, in some ways it's just, you got to roll with it, and it makes us angry. And angry and sad are kind of the same thing. They're just different ends of the same stick, right? But I think one thing that it did is, like everybody just said, oh, we can't do anything about that right now. We can't control it. What we can do is control that we're together, and that we're having, a family reunion again, and, picking up some of the love to offset some of that hate. But you're right. There was an interesting vibe of just, we can take a breather for 3 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's just be here and listen to each other and hear some beautiful music and some beautiful things, and get us through a little bit longer.
Right. I mean, with that in mind, and as we plan for 26 and Canoecopia, how are you feeling about its long-term trajectory at this point with Rutabaga and its future, and then Canoecopia? Like, how are you feeling about the future of the show itself?
I think it's, like I said, it's tied, it's tied to the shop. I don't think the show is going to change. I mean, it'll change in terms of how things run. Sometimes we get better. I mean, after COVID, we made some changes. We made some aisles wider, and just stuff like that. And some of the stuff we did for COVID actually carried over because it was better. And I think that the community aspect of it, I tried to close my shop and I couldn't. because people wouldn't let me. And I could have said, nah, forget it. I'm going to ignore them. But, I've got a stack of letters that I kept of people just pouring their hearts out.
Yeah, I mean, I know that this was an emotional journey for you, Darren. I mean, you express that. We get your newsletters, and you and I communicate periodically, just as individuals, and that this has been both rewarding for you, it seems like, to hear all this response from the paddling people and community that we're talking about, but also exhausting, wearing, challenging, not exactly what you expected when you released that first statement saying that the shop was closing, and now here we are in January and talking about it in a much different context than we did when that first came out. And so, how are you feeling about what's going to be happening at Canoecopia? How are you as an individual feeling about people are going to be coming up to you and talking about lots of stuff this year, Darren? A whole different thing with there's Darren. I got to go say something to him. Like, how are you preparing for it?
I'm going to get a shirt that says, no, I'm not closing. I'm not closing.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just going to do what I always do. People come up and say, hey, I want to talk to you. It's like, great. That's what I'm there for. I don't actually have a physical job at the show. And I do that on purpose because my job is to make sure that everybody's doing well and everybody's happy and the vendors are happy and the attendees are happy.
What is something new? What should people be excited about for Canoecopia 2026, presenter wise, just layout, vibe, anything that's new on the platform this year?
Well, I mean, the show guide, and it'll be mailed, but it'll also be a PDF on the website. We have all the what's new. We always do a what's new section, and we put in all the manufacturers, ask them what's the new cool thing, and we put it in there. And that's, like, from what I understand, looking at the data on the website, the most read section. People want to know what's new and cool, and that's great. And we're going to do that. And there's
depending on when people listen to this, there's the go live day for the Boundary Waters, which is like when the permits for the quota season become available. That's at the end of January. Do you get in on that and sit at the computer at 9:00 on that morning and start booking permits, or are you more like when you're ready to come, you come type?
I will book permits, but places I go usually are pretty easy to get permits because I'm not a 55 guy, right? I'm not going to try and get one of the 16 permits per day for Big Sag. I do think, and I listened to your show about changing the system of how it works, and it is absolutely a cluster. There is no way it has to be like that. I think a lottery system is much better, or just release a few at a time, and people can send in their requests and they can run it through a filter and you can get word back. It's what they do out west. I mean, that's how you get a permit for the Green or the San Juan or the Colorado, is you put in for a permit. And I think if they did that, we would have less problems, people just hoarding all the permits and then canceling them later, because that causes its own problems, right? So I don't jump on at 9:00 and start hitting refresh over and over and over again, because you can get a permit. You may not get a permit for like one or for Big Sag, but you can get a permit. And I think in some ways that's good, because it forces people to go, oh, I guess I'm going to go to Round Lake, and I guess I'm going to do the Tuscarora Portage. And then they do it. It's like, that wasn't so bad, right?
Exactly.
So let's stop thinking about, well, this is the good area of the Boundary Waters, and this is the area that is not so good. And it's like, I can do a week on the eastern, part of the Boundary Waters. Just stay in the campsite for 2 days instead of one, and enjoy where I'm at. But I think there's a lot of beautiful places that people don't go to because the perception is, this is the best place, right? And don't get me wrong, I love the Knife Lake chain and I love paddling, across Big Sag. But it's not the only place that I go.
Well, we're going to be back at Canoecopia, certainly, Paddle and Portage, and Baxley and I will be there and doing interviews again in that room that worked out really well for us last year. We talked to Whitney, your daughter, and
people from Wabakimi and all over Canada and all over Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan. And so we'll be in that same spot again if people either came into that recording space that you helped us set up, Darren, made possible for us. We'll be back as the media partner with you and Rutabaga and Canoecopia again, and we're excited for that. And if you want to hit on anything about why you invited us back in that partnership, that'd be cool, or whatever you want to say about that.
Well, your people are our people. It just made sense. We're not gonna go out and get some giant media company to be our partner. That doesn't make any sense. It's the wrong scale. So you talk to our people. You're good at explaining who we are, and you ask good questions. One thing I did want to bring up is speakers. So because Cliff retired,
yeah,
and that was great for Cliff. I think it's also good for Canoecopia because having him not there, we'll miss him. Having Kevin not there, we'll miss him. That opens up a lot of space for people who are coming up through the ranks. I'm really gratified to see the people that have come forward. A lot of new speakers that we have room for now. They're not famous. They don't want to be famous. They just want to tell their stories. And we still have, Rob Kesselring will still be there. We still have, some of our old favorites. But I got 180 applications for 100 spots. So I had to say no to a lot of people. But I said yes to a lot of new people. There's a lot of new people. There's a guy coming from the Northwest Territories. He's really cool. Flies float planes. There's a guy coming whose father was killed by a bear, so we had to take over the family business. Pretty intense. Yeah, there's just a lot of really cool people that are coming. Like Emily Elkins, she worked for me for about 2 months last year. She came in March, and I had lunch there, and I have lunch with all my new employees. I said, here's the deal. The day you stop learning is the day you tell me I quit. I said, you need to be here until you stop learning. If you're just marking time, it's not good for you, and it'd be hard to lose you, but I think you need to do. And she said, no, I totally get that. And then 2 months later, she said, I got my dream job. I want to grow. I'm like, bye, sorry. It's like, you told me to do that. I said, I absolutely did. There's a lot of people that are new. There's a guy who called me and said, hey, I paddled down the Mississippi River. And I said, okay, yeah, you and about 5,000 other people. I don't want to hear another story about paddling down the Mississippi. He said, no, mine's different. He said, I want to write about the people that I met along the way. I said, okay, I'm listening. And his talk is called Strokes of Kindness, the people of the river. And he told me some of the stories. I'm like, all right, you're in. Because that's what it's about. It's not about I went down the Mississippi. It's like I went down this river and I met these really cool people. And you start doing the deep dive, and that's the best part about my job and about paddling is, this. I mean, you have people on your show, and you get to know their stories intimately, and it's like everybody's got a story. Some of them are more dramatic, like yours, like almost dying. One guy's talking about the Missouri, River 340, which is 340 miles without stopping, sleeping, sitting in a canoe while your partner paddles. That's insane. I would never want to do that. But he's so passionate about it, and not just that, but a passion about Missouri River. So it's not just I raced and it was cool. It's like I raced and it was cool on this really cool river that's beautiful, and people need to understand it. So I like people's personal stories. I don't need to hear about I did this thing and it was cool. So like there's these women, they call themselves the Hudson Bay Girls. And,
oh yeah, of course, we know.
Yeah. They're not going to talk about how hardcore we were, and how they're going to talk about how they grew together as a group, and the group dynamics and how that changes people. She's not speaking because she didn't really want to, but her name's Lisa. When my wife led that trip in September, I don't remember, August or September, I think it was August. It was 6 women. It was her, who's been up there a lot, my daughter, who's been up there quite a bit, a couple other people that had been up once or twice, and then Lisa, who'd never been there before. And she's not particularly athletic. She's not a camper. She's a piano teacher. But she went with this group of ladies, and she had a transformational experience, which is what the Boundary Waters does to people. So she had this transformational experience. And I said, would you write an article for the show guide? Because she's a very good writer. She said, I'd love to do that. I'm like, okay, cool. Would you give a presentation? No. I said, would you talk to one of my friends who's a reporter for paddling publication? She's like, yeah, I could do that. So you'll be talking to Lisa about, mother of three, piano teacher who isn't particularly athletic, went up and had, when especially people like that, she doesn't think she's a strong person because she doesn't do athletic stuff. And then you find out, hey, I can carry a canoe. I can carry a canoe and a pack. I can do this.
Yeah, thanks for lining some of these interviews up, including that one ahead of time, Darren. And I know we'll be speaking to, of course, a number of the presenters, but also just people who we meet at the show. And we look forward to seeing you in person again in Madison and shaking hands and having conversation. And
I'll be there.
Yeah, and just
Carlson's doing a presentation about Camp Coffee. And
yeah, Bob Carlson, Loon's Nest.
He said, I don't know if this is a thing to do or not, but I kind of want to do a presentation about like how to make coffee, because there's a billion ways to make coffee in the wilderness. And I said, well, it's not an infomercial. He said, no, it's he wouldn't do that anyway, right?
Yeah,
he just wants people to make better coffee.
That's right. That's so Bob. I can just hear him rolling that through his own head, even.
So yeah, and he's a great guy on top of that. But again, he's passionate about coffee, and for him to sit in our atrium where it's hands-on, say, okay, here's French press, here's drip, here's all. I'm not a coffee guy, but here's all the ways you can make coffee, and down to swinging a pot around your head, right? How beautiful is that, right?
Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm glad that Bob got in. He was telling me, I hope Darren thinks my idea was all right.
I think it was brilliant.
Nice.
There's a guy talking about the ephemeral joys of November canoe trips. And I'm like, I'll give him a couple spots. And then I, dug a little deeper, and it's like, you know what? People need to get out more. And there's no bugs and there's no people. And you get a 45-degree day in November, and it's nice to go out and paddle.
Well, hey, thank you, Darren. Thanks for chatting with us today to get the word out about Canoecopia coming up in March. And I know it'll be a big crowd as always, and we'll be there. And people can get their tickets now in advance, get their hotels, get everything lined up, and get over there now.
Yeah, I just there's a link on the site for tickets, and then there's also a link for the room blocks we have, which will save people some money. And the Clarion, which is connected, right, is not the Clarion anymore. It's now the Hilton. It's a Hilton Spark. It's beautiful. They gutted it and redid it. Unfortunately, they gutted it 2 weeks before the show last year, and we had to scramble to find rooms. But there's a lot of really cool stuff going on. And I'm looking forward to it.
Great, good. So are we for sure. And we'll see you there. We're talking with Darren Bush, Rutabaga and Canoecopia. Darren, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks to Darren for keeping us in the loop on what's going on. Darren always is a thoughtful and contemplative person, and makes sure to share those things with the world. And especially thank you, Darren, for inviting us back. It is one of the annual highlights of the Paddle and Portage team to meet such amazing people at Canoecopia, to check out really cool gear, and really stay connected to what's unfolding in the larger community. For the two of us who live in far northern Minnesota, it's like our excursion into the front country to know what's happening in the world.
You know, I was just thinking after I spoke with Darren that without Canoecopia and our experiences that we've had there from back in the old radio days where we started the podcast, the Boundary Waters podcast, and then when we ultimately made the move to Paddle and Portage and started this platform, without Canoecopia and our connections there and just seeing the engagement with the people who listen, I don't know if we ever would have started Paddle and Portage without Canoecopia.
If it hasn't been said, I mean, I think it has between the two of us in different ways, but that community and that connection point has been pivotal and instrumental in co-creating this community with folks that made the possibility of creating a hub for everyone a reality.
Yeah, so in other words, without Darren, without Canoecopia, Paddle and Portage probably wouldn't exist. I think that's fair to say. And all the more reason that partnership of we're the media company for the event and the expo, like it just all really makes sense. And again, major shout out to Darren for allowing that and making that possible. And hey, we'll see you in Madison, everybody.
Yes, we will.
Before we go, though, LB, I got some more news. Outdoor wilderness news. Fishing. This also is not applicable to anything in the immediate short term. The walleye bag limit, which is how many walleye you can keep, is going to be changed, likely, very, very likely, I would say, by the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, lowering that from 6 walleye that you can keep to 4. It's been a long time coming. I used to talk with Rob Eklund about this like back in 2017, LB, when he was the representative for this district in the Minnesota House. And so this is like rule change has been, there's nothing that's groundbreaking about it necessarily. Plus, who the heck needs to keep 6 walleye, really? I mean, we do it when we've got either a big event coming up or because we've worked our asses off to get to a lake and it's like, shit, let's just keep, our limit here, for crying out loud. We've worked really hard. But by and large, if we go in together and we walk out of there with 8 walleye, that's a lot of fish,
I've regularly sort of considered on those really special occasions when we both met our limit, coming out kind of like a Santa Claus vibe. Like, who do we get to give the gift of walleye fillets to and make somebody's day special? I mean, you're really good at sharing your catches, and that's still possible.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, if we keep 8 between the two of us, that's 16 fillets that we've got. And so that's plenty of fish. Even that's on the, like, wow, that's a lot of fish. So I did have a chance to speak with the DNR about this pending rule change, and here's some more specifics about that and the timeline.
Join us to talk about some anglers, many anglers, it's probably fair to say, favorite fish in the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness, the walleye, is Brian Nurbin. He's a regional fisheries manager for the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. Brian, thanks for being here.
Happy to join you.
So we're talking about the fact the DNR is taking steps to reduce the bag limit for walleye from 6, where it's currently at, down to 4. It's something that's been discussed for many years here in the state of Minnesota. And where are we at on this, Brian?
Yeah, so we're actually taking the step of making a formal proposal. We're starting what is called a rulemaking process. That's the official process that we're mandated in statute to follow if we're going to change a statewide regulation like the walleye limit. And so part of that is for us to say what proposed change we want to make and then give the public a chance to weigh in on that. So we've got a public comment period that's happening between now and March 5th for the public to weigh in on it.
All right. And there was one done just last year in 2025, if I'm not mistaken, and that there was a majority of people, 60% somewhere in there, that said they want this to change. I mean, there's been groundswell support for this for a long time in Minnesota. Not by everybody, but by the majority, as we've seen.
Yeah, we've seen growing interest over the years, that as we've done more of these sort of public input sort of opportunities, that interest has gotten higher and higher. And I think it just shows that anglers are learning more about the issue and thinking about, what they care about for managing our walleye into the future. And I think for a lot of them, they feel like trying to add a little protection feels like the right time to do that.
All right. So this is a statewide shift if this moves forward, and it would go into effect. The rule change would happen in this fishing opener 2027, so May 2027, basically, if this moves forward. And for our listeners and people who follow Battle and Portage, we're generally talking about lakes inside the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness, Superior National Forest, in and around the BWCA primarily. And so for those lakes, that would impact 98% of those lakes, because there are border waters that have different regulations, including the end of the Gunflint, Seagull, Sag. So what about lakes that have a special regulation currently in place?
Yeah, so this proposal is not going to make any changes to those existing special regulations. So if we put a lake-specific regulation on a lake because we had a reason to feel like we wanted to have a different level of harvest than the statewide regulation, that won't change. And also our border waters, so the lakes that are making up the boundary between Canada and the United States when it comes to the boundary waters, those lakes have their own set of regulations that they fall under, and this won't change any of those either. And so other lakes like Lake of the Woods, also same kind of situation.
All right. Okay. So the majority of BWCA lakes, though, I mean, that's just choosing Brule Lake and Horseshoe Lake over here on the east side of the wilderness. It's going to go from 6 to 4 in 2027 if this moves forward. And I mean, 4 walleye is still a fair amount of fish to have a camp. Is there concern, though, that people are going to start keeping those, 25 inchers that they might otherwise put back, because now I can keep fewer fish, so I got to keep bigger fish? Is that something you guys think about?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something we've considered. One thing that also won't change with this proposal is that we currently have a statewide law that says you can only keep 1 walleye over 20 inches, and that also is not going to change. And so if somebody does want to keep that fish over 20 inches, they'll be able to do that under this regulation. And maybe this might influence a few people to do that, but I think usually most anglers kind of have in their ideas what an eater walleye is, and I'm not sure that this is going to change that. That people will still probably target the fish that they've generally targeted in the past.
Okay. Well, what led to this decision other than, public input and just the idea, hey, we don't need to be keeping 6 fish every time we go out, and having other people do that, of course, too. And so what are some factors, some things that are led to this?
Yeah, so we've been looking at, some of the science that's out there about walleye and some of the changes that are happening on the landscape. So whether that's climate change and warming waters, or invasive species that are changing the ecology of some of these lakes. The science is pretty clear that those threats are not going to favor walleye. They're going to probably favor other species. And so knowing that that's potentially coming, we wanted to take a proactive step to say, you know what, we've got excellent walleye fishing in our lakes in Minnesota, and we want to keep it that way. And so with these threats kind of looming on the horizon, we're looking at trying to do something to take a little bit of pressure off those walleye populations before that gets to be an issue. The other thing we're looking at is that, this regulation's been in place since 1956. And as you know, a few things have changed in angling since 1956. Even in a place like the Boundary Waters, where it's kind of more of a primitive sort of experience, there's still people bringing electronics into the Boundary Waters to be able to look for fish and, understand the lake bottom. And also just our information exchange is so much higher now, where people are talking to each other about how to catch walleye, how to be a better walleye angler, and what are the hot lakes, where's the hot bite, what's the hot lure. That information exchange is way different than it used to be. Anglers are just better at catching walleye, in long and the short of it, than they used to be. And so, that's another reason why we feel like maybe being proactive and trying to, protect the walleye a little bit, take a little bit of pressure off of them. This is another way to do that.
Mm-hmm. Right. The technology side of it. I mean, there's not a lot of anglers, nobody that I know that outside of the winter would lug a live scope in on a canoe trip necessarily, but that probably is more applicable statewide as we look beyond the BWCA, I would imagine.
Sure. Yeah, I know some people that take their depth finders into the boundary waters, though, that they said it's a game changer. So
right. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely more common, like a Vexlar or some sort of easy to lug fish finder, but not those straight up live scope type things. So what's the timeline, this sequence? I mean, it ends, public comment ends March 5th for this current state. And then, as I mentioned, March or May of 27, it would be implemented. What happens between March 5th and when a decision is made?
So we'll look at all those public comments that come in and try to summarize what we've heard and maybe develop some responses to some of those comments to address the things that are brought up. And that'll kind of inform, if we've learned anything during the public comment period that wants us to reconsider some parts of the proposal. So we'll have that kind of internal conversation within DNR and decide where we want to go from there. If we want to make any tweaks to the proposal, or if we want to move ahead as it was, that kind of thing. So we'll have to provide all of that comment material to an administrative law judge who will review it and make sure that the DNR is sound in considering that public comment. We'll see about whether we have to do a formal hearing in front of an administrative law judge. That comes down to how many people request that. We have to reach a certain threshold where people say, I see significant problems with the proposal that I think we want to have a hearing in front of an administrative law judge to hear those out. If we get that level of requests, we may have to do a more formal what's called a statement of need and reasonableness, where we have to write out a fairly substantial document that lays out the DNR's rationale for the proposal and why we think it's the right thing to do and what we think will happen when we do it, and have that be reviewed by a judge as well. So that may slow down the process a little bit if we get to that step. We'll just have to see. But we're hopeful that we can have it in place by the spring of 2027 for that fishing opener. Right.
And there is an online submission here in the day and age of bots and that type of stuff. How are you vetting, or so that people aren't just rallying and mass organization dump it in there just so it goes to this law judge?
Well, we know that some of that happens, right? Where, people will get organized and send out sample, documents to submit. Even if it's not a bot that's doing it, it can be, a group of people that all send in the same comment and stuff. What I will emphasize is this is not a voting process. This is not all right, if we get above a certain threshold of people that are opposed, we're going to do it, or above a certain threshold of people that want to do it, we're going to do it. This is more about information gathering. It's about hearing from the public about what are the pros and cons they see to this proposal, and are there things that the DNR hasn't thought about that we should be considering as we move ahead with it. That's the kind of comment we're going to want to hear. And so like I said, we'll see what comes in from that. Sometimes we'll see a lot of the same comment, and that'll be, all right, here's that type of comment, and here's our response to it. And that's how we'll address those sorts of things.
All right. Are you hearing anything or communicating directly with outfitters up here in the Gunflint, Ely side of the Boundary Waters region up here?
Yeah, I have not been privy to whether, some of that's happened locally up there with some of our local fisheries staff. But we've been trying to keep people aware that this has been something we've been talking about for a while. And that's been through all sorts of online public comment periods and, communications we're having with local stakeholders. So, I'm hoping that people are aware of this and know that we want to hear their opinions too. And so if they've got concerns or questions or reasons why they think this is a good idea, we want to hear about those.
You mentioned the duration of this, and we have a couple times hit on that now. I mean, I remember I used to interview Rob Eklund when he was our representative in the Minnesota House, District 3A, and I was talking with him. This is pre-COVID, probably 2017, 2018. I remember that, we had an interview about they might lower the bag limit from 6 to 4. That's going back 7-8 years now. Yep. And I think there even was a possibility of a bill, and it just didn't move anywhere in the legislature.
Yep. It's been at the legislature a couple times. It wasn't the DNR that, put forward a formal proposal to the legislature to do it. It was stakeholders that brought it forward. They had a senator that carried it for a couple of years in the Senate, and it just never got all the way to passage between the two houses and moving to a bill that the governor would even get a chance to sign. So, yeah, stakeholders have continued to bring it up to the DNR though as an issue that they feel like we should be addressing for all the reasons I've kind of spelled out to you already. And my boss, Brad Parsons, who's the fisheries section manager, has kind of said that it's time to call the question on this. We've been talking about this issue for 10 plus years. We think we've got a pretty sound rationale why we're proposing what we're proposing. But it's time to actually move forward with trying to make that change rather than just continuing to talk about it.
Okay. Well, if it moves forward, how about that group from Indiana that comes to the Boundary Waters every summer, a group of 7-8 dudes, and they're used to keeping 6 fish per person on those trips, and now all of a sudden that rule changed and they're not reading the fine print in the handbook. Like, how will the messaging go beyond just this where we're hypothetically talking about it?
I think that, as you probably are aware, fishing regulations are pretty big news in Minnesota, especially when it comes to walleye. And so, I fielded a bunch of calls from the media today, talking with people about this issue. And you can bet that if this change goes forward, there's going to be coverage in the media about it. And we're going to make it very front and center on our fishing regulations for the year that it gets implemented, if that's 2027, for example, where it's going to be pretty clear if you even glance at the fishing regulations. Right in the front, there's a sections like what's different in this year, and probably in very bold letters, it's going to be the walleye limit is now 4, if that's what we end up making it. And we'll do our usual press releases and other media sorts of things, and hopefully the outfitters and other places, bait shops and things up in the canoe country are going to be well aware of this as well, and they'll be able to tell their customers, hey, you might know this is different from last year.
Okay, got it. That sounds good. I mean, we'll do our part certainly for BWCA with I think headlines and Google friendly things that would make it very obvious this is happened or happening potentially at this point, and happened if it doesn't move forward. So thank you. Yeah, of course. I mean, thanks for the information, and we'll keep our listeners and readers informed here at Paddle and Portage about if this does move forward. And it sounds like that number would be 4 if it does, right? I mean, is that the kind of that
right
magic
now
number?
That's what we're proposing, and like I said, it's not set in stone. We'll see what kind of public comment comes in, but that's where we're looking right now.
Okay, so looking to lower the walleye bag limit, which is currently at 6 for BWCA lakes, most lakes in Minnesota, from 6 to 4. We'll keep people informed about that. We'll add some links to the public comments if people want to submit one of those as well. And we're talking with Brian Nervin. He is a regional fisheries manager for the DNR. Brian, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Well, good to know. And it's another reminder that we as humans don't have to be greedy, that the woods and the waters will usually show up to give us what we need, not always what we want, but to take care of us and have a full belly if we need it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so we will continue to follow all of these stories as they develop. And of course, when you're in Madison for Canoecopia, stop by and say hi to us. Be sure to talk to Darren, too. He's always out roaming the floor, as he shared with us in the interview. And, it's so beautiful that we're just getting started in this winter, and there's already been so much information happening. We got the sled dog races on the horizon. We've got more winter camping trips on our personal calendar and schedule, and lots of stories coming your way on the podcast. So stay tuned and follow the journey.
In the big bright blue come the northern lights.
Wait, great Josh Dick said, here's the thing.
Here we go.
I said, when the Forest Service changed that to April 1, the food storage order start date, I said, gosh, if I was a musician, I was kind of taking a little bit of credit for it, I guess, quite frankly. Like, they listen to all my griping and all my emails about that March 1 date being like, why is this in place? And I was just reflecting on it, sort of gloating a little bit that night.
You gloat now.
Texting with the great Josh Dix, and I said, gosh, if I was a musician, I'd write a song and sing it. I'm just so happy about that change. And he's like, I'm sensing a kind of a John Prine type thing, some kind of a singer-songwriter, acoustic kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's Ian Tamlin's alley.
So maybe we'll take a shot at it, I guess. The Forest Service changed that start date on the food storage order.
I think we know we're close to the border in the boundary waters.
Oh, hang that food so the bears don't bother you.
Because a bear staying away is a happy, alive bear.
We're all going to the same.
I hope nobody ever hears that.